Well, happy Labor Day, everybody. I hope you guys are enjoying football, school, and a 3-day weekend. I also want to say I love seeing fathers and daughters sitting together during church. It's awesome. It's pretty cool. So congrats to you guys and your family. But anyways, I got something I got to get off my chest. So I loved Independence Day. And when I heard that this movie was coming out, I was pumped. And then I saw Rotten Tomatoes' review of this movie, and they gave them a 32%, okay, which is terrible. And that makes me very, very angry because this movie should have been rated 0. That's how I felt about this movie when I went and saw it. It was an interesting film, to say the least. I wish the aliens had won the first movie so there wasn't a second movie. But those are just my personal feelings. If you want to go check it out on Redbox or Amazon or however you watch it these days, I encourage you to do so. Spoiler alert, we win again. So, which is pretty neat. But no, here's what the storyline was for this movie. As you know, the aliens return 2 decades after the freak alien invasion that nearly destroyed us the first time around. Thankfully, there was Will Smith in the first movie. His son was in the second one, which is pretty neat, which wasn't his real son, thankfully, because he's a terrible actor, too. I'm just going to get all my reviews out today, you guys. So be prepared, since it's the last week of God and Film, all right? So here's what happens. Another alien mothership shows up, and they're here for revenge. But here's the key section of the movie that kind of what we'll kind of focus on in a sense, and what was memorable to me, which was hard to find. But this white spear looks a lot like Eva from WALL-E, which got me really excited. But it was much bigger than Eva. I'll just call it her older brother. Was uncovered at a crash landing on the moon where we shot down an alien ship thinking that it was bad. It was actually good. They uncovered this spear, and luckily this spear speaks English, which is really convenient, okay, for all of us. And in the movie, they were able to activate this spear, and once they activate it, it lets them know what is happening to their planet, round 2 of this alien invasion. And pretty much what's happening are these aliens are here to take all of basically the core of our world, which is going to fuel their ships to go destroy more planets. While this big Eva, this spear, this big white spear, is here to do their best possible best case scenario is to take as many of us humans to their planet, where they are taking a bunch of refugees in of multiple planets that have been destroyed by these aliens, to bring them to safety, to bring them peace in a time of chaos where they're losing everything. And sorry, guys, I guess my thing is scratching something. So the planet's core was trying to be absorbed, but I won't tell you what happens next. I'll let you go watch the movie, even though I already spoiled it for you. But here's my favorite quote from the movie. It says this: the president, which you heard in this trailer, who was this inspirational guy in the first movie, this time around he's not the president anymore, but he's still around. Obviously, they honor him as a past president, and he has this to say: "We convinced an entire generation that this is a battle that we could win. We sacrifice each other no matter what the cost, and that's worth fighting for." And that reminded me of a psalm that is over 3,000 years old, a song that was actually written, a prayer that many Jewish men and women would have prayed, especially in Jesus' day. This psalm is Psalm 46. But before we get into that, I would love for you guys to do me a big favor. And those Connect cards that Justin talked about a minute ago, if you guys could pull those back out, and on the back where there's some lines that you can write in, if you could write this word, or these words, be well. So today's verse of the day, we'll call it that, is those who fear the Lord are secure. He will be a refuge for their children. That's out of Proverbs 14:26. So those who fear the Lord are secure. So let's jump into Psalm 46. If you guys want to use the Bibles that are on your chairs, you'll find it on page 402 or 403. And if you want to pull up your YouVersion app, which we always encourage here at Blue Bridge, you can do that as well. There's also great reading, daily reading plans on there. all kinds of stuff that you can check out to help you start developing habits to spend time with Jesus. So here's a little background on this psalm. So you'll see the heading on there on the Bible we provided that says, God is our fortress. Different Bibles will give you different headings. A couple other ones are God is with us, God is on our side, God, a mighty fortress, or the mighty God. Now, as you can see from all these different kind of headings, the basis of this psalm is celebrating the power of God, the mighty defender of his people. Now, this is a very famous psalm for those who are feeling troubled, those who are in the midst of chaos, feeling alone, feeling broken, full of fear. There's a couple different verses here that people will lean on during those times. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're going to jump into all 11 verses, talk a little bit about them, and then see how that applies for us today. So verses 1 through 3, let's just read that right now. It says this: God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth gives way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam through the mountains tremble at its swelling. So right away, you will see that inside of these first 3 verses, the first thing we hear is God is our refuge. If you've been growing up in church your whole life, you've probably heard that many, many times. If this is your first time in church, or you're just starting to come to church again, this all that means is God is our strength. God is our home. God keeps us strong. God keeps us confident. God keeps us unafraid. See, the expression that God is our refuge also must be shifted to a verb phrase, which you could read it like this: God is the one who protects us, or God is the one who shelters us. And so we will not be afraid if the earth shall shake. We will not be afraid if mountains shall fall into the sea. And that got me thinking, we live in a very safe part of the country where we don't have a lot of natural disasters, where we will see something as traumatic as something like this that this writer was writing about. And right now, if you've seen the news, there's the storms that are hitting Louisiana and all the people who are hurting from that. That just broke my heart, thinking that they are literally going through this right now. And so my reminder is just to continue to pray for those in need. And then all over the world where there's just natural disasters all the time that we here in the Northwest are safe from. But I can't imagine what it means to really live that out and have to keep the faith when things are literally falling down around you. So verses 4 and 5 say this: There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God will help her when mornings dawn. So as you see here, he paints a picture of a river running through this holy town, talking about Jerusalem. And it was more of a figure, trying to create a figure of what the temple meant to that community, how the temple was this flowing river that just provided joy, provided life, provided peace, provided stability. And so he wants us to see God, the ultimate temple, even now, as this firm foundation where we can find safety, where we can find God, where we can be glad. And so if you look deeper, it even says a river that causes the people in God's city to be glad, if you break down the text. And not to be moved in verse 5 means not to be defeated, not to be destroyed. No matter what's happening around you, if you hold on to God, who is the ultimate pillar that can never be destroyed, you too will not be destroyed. And then if you go into verse 6 and 7, we'll read that out loud. The nations rage, the kingdoms totter. He utters his voice, the earth melts. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. So the first thing you hear is he lets his voice be heard. okay, which is huge because God, in a time of chaos, like I said, when this was written, when the earth was going through some changes and there was earthquakes and there's all these things happening around them, and there's even wars going on, tribes going after tribes, country after country, God would frighten these countries of the other tribes and shakes their kingdoms. Even when they were bigger than them and better than them and their backs were against the wall, God always found a way to save his people. And so in verse 7, where it talks about the Lord of hosts, that's actually a military term back then. And what that meant, the reason that's so powerful, is because it portrays God as the commander of the army. So when you get called Lord of hosts, that's a very, very prestigious title to be attached to your name. So when they approach him, it's like Lord of the armies, the Lord who is the strongest of all, the Lord who is all-powerful, or the Lord who has all strength. The Lord who has all strength. And then 8 and 9, as the psalm goes on, it gets better and better. Come, behold the works of the Lord, how he has brought desolations on the earth. He makes wars cease to the end of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the chariots with fire. So what's awesome about these two verses is no matter what's happening in this world, natural disasters or war or whatever, God restores. He, at the end of the day, always restores order. You see it in Scripture from beginning to end. In our lives, you see it, and you see it all over. God is all about restoring. And the Creator takes control of his creation. As you read story after story in the Old Testament, as you read about Jesus in the New Testament and what his life was, as you read in the book of Acts of all these churches being planted and being on the fringe, God restores people, he restores communities. And then if you go into my favorite two verses of this whole psalm, 10 and 11, he says this, the last two verses, be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. The part that I love are the two words that just say, be still. I love those two words, be still. And so what we learn here is he is longing for the fighting to stop, for the worrying to be no more, for the anxiety that has overtaken hearts to be replaced with joy, and to be still, and to know that he is God. The ultimate faith factor, the ultimate trust factor. And then if you want to dig deeper into that saying, be still, the Hebrew verb actually means to cease, to be inactive. In other words, surrender. Stop. Drop your weapons. Make peace. And then the second part is know that I am God. The same sense it's used as acknowledging it, recognizing it, believing it, confessing it, admitting it. Learning that he is God, seeing that he is God. And then the last part, I am exalted, meaning he rules, he is above, he is dominant. Not in a way where he wants to dominate us, but in a way where he is dominant, we can trust him, we are in his care. Let God be God. And so I ask you this question today. When is the last time you released the pressing issues in your life to God? Or how about when is the last time you relaxed in the presence of God? You see, if you go back to the beginning of this psalm, God is our refuge. That is so true. There is no denying that. I can speak to it in my own life, and there are many others who can do the same exact thing. But that does not mean we will never have difficult or dangerous situations happen to us in our lifetime. As we see on the news, as some of us may have experienced in our life, maybe some of us are experiencing it now. And so that brings me to another story in Scripture that I want to jump into about Jesus. It's in the book of Matthew. Again, if you want to use the Bible that we provided, it's on page 692 and 693. These Bibles are for you to take home too if you don't have a Bible. And I'm going to kind of summarize this story, but here's what happened. So Jesus is with his disciples. And one of his disciples, Peter, his mother-in-law, is very, very sick. She's literally on her deathbed. And Peter asked Jesus, can we go take care of this? Can we go see her? So Jesus shows up, and the impossible happens as usual, right? When Jesus shows up somewhere, all he literally does is reach out and touch her hand, and she is completely healed. So much so, not so like, when you and I are sick and we have maybe had the flu or we're down with a cold, we gradually get better and our energy comes back little by little. This lady was literally on her deathbed, and she went from being almost dead to literally serving them right after because she was so excited and everyone that was there. Now, why? I'm surprised because usually mother-in-laws, people are like, man, I got to get rid of them. That was a joke. You can laugh. I love my mother-in-law. Some of my wife's in here. Don't think anything crazy is going to happen. So in this story, as it goes on, later that night, people heard about Peter's mother-in-law being healed, so they wanted that to happen in their friends' lives. So they began to bring all kinds of people around Jesus, whether it was people who were demon-possessed, whether it was people who were sick and ill, like Peter's mother-in-law. And Jesus continued to do what he always did, the impossible. He began to restore people. And again, just as Jesus touched Peter's mother-in-law's hand and healed her by one little touch, it says in Scripture, in one word, he removed demons from people. For all that we know, who were haunting them for months, years, a lifetime. One word removed those demons. So as simple as a touch and as simple as one word, Jesus performs these miracles, these healings. And while this is all happening, there's a man there who is seeing all this. And like us, when we hear about Jesus' story, we get curious, right? And we want to know more about him. And we want to know what he's really about. And so he begins to really ponder what's happening. He sees all these people being restored. And he realizes, I want to be a part of this. So he does what we've all done, but just in a little bit different way. He approaches Jesus, and he says, I want to follow you, which is pretty awesome, right? He processed the whole day of seeing who Jesus was, hearing about who Jesus was, and then approaching Jesus at his feet and saying, I want to follow you. What do I got to do? And Jesus' answer is pretty cool. It's awesome. We're actually getting ready to get in a boat, and we're going to go across the sea, and we're going to continue doing what we're doing, spreading this good news. But this guy's response was very reasonable. He says, well, my father just passed away, and I have to go take care of the family affairs. It's my responsibility. Which in my eyes and most of our eyes here, that's a pretty good excuse, right? His father just passed away. He's in charge of the estate. He needs to go help take care of all the things for his family to make sure his family is good to go, and more importantly, that they can mourn the death of their father the correct way. But Jesus' response is, no, you follow me now. Now that seems pretty radical, right? But see, Jesus wants all of us, no distractions, sometimes radically like leaving behind family affairs. And if you keep going in the story, the second part of the story, they get in the boat, as Jesus said, and all the disciples and everyone who's following them, and they head across the sea. Now you got to remember, some of his disciples were at one time fishermen, so they're very comfortable in a boat. They're very comfortable around water. They're very comfortable even when things get a little shaky in a boat. But that specific night, there was a huge storm. Huge. So much so that people who literally lived on the water for a career were frightened. So you know it was the real deal. And they run to Jesus out of fear of, Lord, there is a huge storm. We are going to die. What are you going to do? And Jesus' response is simple, like, hey, it's me. It's Jesus, the refuge, the ultimate refuge. Be still. You're going to be okay. And they all were. Now, I love the order of these events, and I don't think it was by accident that they happened this way. But you got to remember, these disciples just got done spending a whole day with Jesus where they saw him literally touch a hand, that's all it took, and literally say one word, and people were restored. That easy. And if I'm a disciple in that moment, I'm thinking to myself, man, this is pretty cake. This is pretty awesome. Life is good. I'm glad I quit my job and followed this guy because I just get to go around and seeing miracles and hanging out, eating food. This is pretty easy. I'm liking this. But see, I think that storm was planned on purpose to remind them something that's very important, that's even true today in our lives, and that is simply this. And Jesus talks about it in John 16:33. He says this, "In me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world." So no matter what our circumstance, the safest place to be is always in the center of God's will. He promises to be our refuge. So be still and know that he is God. Be still and know that he is God. When I say those words, be still, most of us in here are thinking of trying to get our kid to be still, right? Like my daughter's 10 months old, and changing her diaper now is impossible because she won't lay still. She wants to spin, roll, and everything. It makes for really fun times. And I can't wait for her to start walking. And I'm sure some of you with toddlers or 5-year-olds or 9-year-olds or 10-year-olds, when you try to tell them, hey, be still, see how that goes for you, right? But it's not just true in children. See, everything, even in us as adults, wants to stay in motion constantly, physically, mentally, emotionally, even spiritually. You see, those two words, be still, are so challenging for us today culturally. But if you look at the meaning behind be still, here's what it says. To let drop, to release, to relax. You might be thinking right now, especially in a season with school starting up and sports starting up and jobs picking back up and summer's now behind us and vacations seem distant. How in the heck am I supposed to relax? Even when we put time aside to read our Bible, whether it's in the morning or in the afternoon or in the evening, if you're like me, you tend to rush through it at times because you got to get to your next thing, right? So it just becomes like a box that we check throughout the day. Now, when I really break down be still, which is what God asks us to do, that's not being still. So again, I ask you this question in a different way. When is the last time you were quiet enough to hear the whisper of God? Like I said earlier, culture has taught us to be afraid of silence. Silence is like the ultimate enemy of who we are today, no matter if we're in first grade or if we're getting ready to retire. We don't like silence. It's awkward. It's scary. It's just weird. It's foreign. And I believe this is not by accident. You see, I don't believe everything that the enemy does is like this horrible, evil thing. He takes even good things like time and turns them into you have to be busy all the time or you're not working hard enough. If your schedule's not full, you're not doing enough. If you're sitting there in silence, that means you're weird. And so what do we do instead? We try to fill that time, right? But I ask you this question. What would happen if you had 1 hour to be still in your day? What about 30 minutes? Or 15? Or just 5? You may be thinking, I don't even have 5 minutes to be still in my day because the kids are up and then they're to bed and then I got to get the house clean. Or I'm at work in the morning, then I'm at the gym and then I'm back at meetings. But maybe that's exactly what you need is just 5 minutes just to be still, to stop running from silence. And trust me, I am as guilty of this as anyone in this room. Trying to fill my calendar has been the fall of me. So here's my simple challenge for you today. On your Connect cards, my challenge for you today is to write on there, when will I pick a window out of my day starting this week where I'm just going to be still for 5 minutes? And this is what that means. Turning off your TV, taking out the headphones. See, I think we've even gotten a horrible habit of while we do our devotions, we have to have headphones in with worship music on, right? There's always something going on. Turning off our phone on airplane mode. Or turning off notifications from social media. Going for a walk and leaving your phone behind. and just being okay with silence. Because how else is we supposed to hear from God? And here's another one. For those of you maybe who've been following Jesus for 1 day or 1 year or for 10 years, and you still for some reason haven't taken that leap to get baptized yet. There's no better way to express the inward work of what God is doing in your life than by saying, I'm going to get baptized and show others that I'm making him my ultimate refuge for the rest of my life, that he will be my refuge. So again, on your Connect cards, if you right next to where you're writing your little challenge on when you're gonna spend your time being still. If you're haven't got baptized yet, excuse me. Right, I want to get baptized. It can happen next Sunday night, or it can happen before that. It can happen today after church if you want to get crazy. So now I encourage you guys. I want you guys to watch this quick video for me real fast. So after studying this passage in Psalm and in Matthew and hearing about being still and just the challenge, I ask us this question today: what can God be saying to us at Blue Bridge today? Long term, I can think of a couple different things. I have to go back to verse 4 when it talked about the visualization of a temple being like a river in that community of that day in Jerusalem. I think of us as Blue Bridge. Can we be that same thing here in this community, where we can be a place where people can come and be glad and find refuge? Can we challenge ourselves to be those kind of people? When they come here, they feel that. They feel just joy. They feel peace. They feel like a place where they can release their burdens. And then can we do the same thing? I also think of Sunday mornings here. Can we begin to work harder here at Blue Bridge to continue to create environments where others can discover and develop who Jesus is, and discover and develop how to be still? Because it is a learned. It's like a muscle. You have to train yourself. Or it can be awkward, like we talked about. Or building our teams bigger so we are prepared to multiply. Our heart here at Blue Bridge is to multiply. Is that in East Pasco? Is that in West Pasco? Is that in Richland? God will determine that. But we know the vision of our church, the vision of what's been laid out before us by Justin and Jana, is that we want to multiply. We want to go where people are, whether that's even beyond Tri-Cities, Walla Walla, Prosser, Montana, if you want to get crazy. But we want to begin to work harder by building our teams bigger, because in order to do that, we have to grow our teams, right? So pray about that. Or as Justin mentioned earlier, getting on the email address, mystory@bluebridge.org, and share with us what God is doing in your life. Because we want to know, we want to celebrate with you. We want to share your story if you allow us to. And then also, maybe you're here and you've been practicing being still with Jesus for years. We want to hear about how you do that. Because there's a lot of people that we don't have the wisdom, because I'm only 31. And there's someone here, maybe he's only 17. And there's a room full of kids who are in the nursery and elementary. They need to be taught what it means to be still with Jesus. And what better way than to hear from people who have lived awesome lives loving Jesus and can share with us how to be still in such a chaotic culture. Especially when I've grown up just being busy all the time because social media or because I've been taught to. Or together nights, as Justin talked about at the senior center in Pasco. I've been in that neighborhood. Pasco High is a block away from there. We do Young Life Club about 5 blocks away from there. That neighborhood needs a refuge. That neighborhood needs Jesus more than ever. And how cool is it that for one Sunday evening, we get to be that for that community? So I encourage you, come. Great place to get baptized too if you haven't been baptized yet, as Justin talked about too. Short term, what can we begin to do here at Blue Bridge? Responding through what we're about to do when we worship here in a second is we're going to do communion and we're going to do the prayer corners as we do every Sunday. And my challenge for you is at those prayer spots, will you be bold enough to get up and go pray with someone about something in your life where you need God to help you be still? What has you feeling anxious right now? What has you feeling alone? What has you feeling broken? What has you feeling scared? Go pray about it with those people. You can trust them. Or communion. Why not go with your spouse or go with a friend or go by yourself, get communion, go back to your chair and just take the time to be still and thank Jesus for what he did on that cross. And thank Jesus because of that cross, we have refuge forever. Going back to Independence Day, we think we have chaos in our lives. Imagine being in a place where there's alien invasion, right? That's chaos. And I think of that president who was 20 years past his term as president, and in a time where he's aged and he's older, in a time where he could just easily have just said, whatever, I've served my time, I've lived my life, in a time where he could have been super full of anxiety because he had kids that were younger, and he didn't know if they were going to be able to live in a world anymore. This fictional character shows us what it meant to be still and to trust. And that's why I go back to that quote. In a time of chaos, in a time of no hope, he had this to say: we convinced an entire generation that this is a battle that we could win. We sacrifice for each other no matter what the cost, and that's worth fighting for. So I ask us, as we close, can we do the same this week? In the midst of all that's happening in our lives, can we be still and can we take refuge in him like we never have before? Let's pray. Jesus, I just thank you that you are our refuge. I pray as we go this week that you can just teach us a new way to be still, that we will no longer be afraid of silence, that we will no longer try to fill our calendars for whatever reason may be, that we will fill our calendars with time with each other, with our families, and more importantly, God, just with you. I pray for anything that is weighing on people, whether it's anxiety, fear, loneliness, that you just can be that solution to whatever that may be in their lives. And I pray as Blue Bridge moves forward that we too can be aware and be sensitive to teaching people to being still. And that it's okay to be still. And more importantly, God, making you the ultimate refuge in our life. I pray this in your name. Amen.